We got Tommy Curran, we got Phil Perry, both who were at the press conference today, getting to kind of see the bliss that you were talking about in your report. And Tom, it gets even more blissful when we hear the news that Stefon Diggs is ready to go. Are you surprised that he's ready?
Yeah, it's a guy who had an ACL. Usually you anticipate. And part of the reason it took so long for him to latch on, and the reason he's on the contract he is people are obviously and realistically think, okay, you got a wide receiver at 32 coming off an ACL. How much can he give you in 2025? But we began to see in minicamp that he was indicating, hey, this guy could be ready for the start of the season. And now to have him ready for the start of training camp, Phil, it's kind of a jaw dropper. And it might change the geometry a little bit for this team, Phil.
Well, to me, to hear the words no limitations is really surprising, because you can be physically ready to be back on the field. Mm-hmm. You can be physically ready to practice and run around as he was during the spring and really still not be yourself and still need a little bit of a ramp-up period. And so let's see how it plays out these first few practices of training camp. But to hear those words, no limitations, that makes it sound like he's going to be as full a go as somebody who is completely healthy and 100%, which is shocking to come off that surgery, which is really difficult, especially at that position, Kayla, and especially for a guy who's into his 30s now.
It also adds more to this receiving room, because without Stefon Diggs being a full go, I feel like the level of competition just dies down. Well, now you have a guy, and we just heard Mike Vrabel say, who is not going to be limited thus far. Maybe he said in some periods you're not going to see him in every single rep, but what does it do for the entirety of the competition, Tom, when it comes to the receiving room? Because now you got Diggs, he's not on the PUP as of right now. You're expecting him to get that signing bonus, and we'll see when the check actually hits the bank. But he should be playing with all the motivation in the world to not only show these guys, look, I'm trying to come back even better than ever. I'm expecting my payday, but also no limitations. What does that do for the competition of this receiver room?
In a lot of different, it has a ripple effect. First, it has a ripple effect on people are going to be able to watch how he works and prepares. And I think one of the interesting things about Diggs is he can look at Jalen Polk or Kyle Williams or any number of Javon Baker. Diggs was a 5th-round pick way back when. He has understood what it means to come up from being an overlooked player to creating him a career where he was at one point one of the 5 or so best receivers in the league. So he's going to show work ethic. He's going to change, as I mentioned, the geometry of the offense, because he's going to draw people with him. He's going to be a hell of a lot better matchup for guys like Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis to deal with. So it's going to help the defense. So, Phil, it's really, I don't want to say limitless, but there's a lot of ripple.
Well, and he gives you one player in that receiver room that at least has number one receiver, quote unquote, kind of upside, Kayla, right? We've seen him have 1,000-yard season after 1,000-yard season. Now, I think that's setting the bar a little too high for him. He is a receiver, which is a very difficult position to come back from that ACL injury. We haven't seen in the last half dozen seasons. There's one guy who the season after tearing his ACL came back and had a 1,000-yard year. It was Chris Godwin, great receiver. He was 26 years old at the time. Stefon Diggs is going to turn 32 in November. So I think it's setting it a little too high to expect him to be a number one receiver. But if all goes well and if he stays healthy all year and he's the guy he was before his injury last year, that's the kind of upside he has, could make a massive impact on this offense.
Let me ask you this, because when we were in OTAs and in minicamp, and no, Stefon Diggs was not a full participant, a full go. But besides the physicality of it all, Tom, are you concerned with his ability to latch on and understand this playbook? Because I know that Phil mentioned in OTAs that he didn't seem all too confident. So it's going to be really telling within the 5 weeks how he's been able to not only adapt to the playbook, but execute that. Does that concern you at all?
I don't think so, just because of, he's worked with Brian Daboll, who runs a similar offense when he was with Buffalo. I'm not sure who the OC was in Houston last year, but he worked in that system, which isn't too far afield.
Bobby Slowick, who's no longer there.
Thank you. But when we watched him during OTAs, he wasn't able to take part in everything, but he was standing behind the offense, watching how the quarterbacks were processing what they were doing. He was with McDaniels. I just think that he is, for all the time we spent saying how he can be a pain in the ass on the field, I think he is a really devoted learner and gives full effort to that stuff, Phil.
Yeah, I think so too. And he's just been with a number of different teams and a number of different coaches now at this point. It's actually interesting to track sort of the arc of his career, where he's in Minnesota and he's learning largely a Kubiak offense, which is a version of the Shanahan offense. He left it for a time to do the Daboll thing. Then he goes back to a Shanahan type of offense with Bobby Slowick in Houston last year, catches on really quickly. You hope that there are enough similarities, Kayla, between the Dayball thing and the McDaniels thing that in 2025 he'll be off and running.
Yeah, I mean, he's a veteran guy, and it's also reassuring and refreshing to hear some of his players like Hunter Henry earlier today saying, man, is it pretty impressive to see what he's been able to do within the past couple of weeks. So seems like it's pretty good news for Stefon Diggs thus far. It is the start. For now, though, you can check out the Patriots Talk podcast for the latest on the team all throughout training camp. You can scan the QR code. It's there on your screen. You can find it on your favorite podcasting app. It's also on YouTube.
Good episode today. Good
Let's
one.
go.
Yep.